The extended organism idea leads to some radical conclusions about the nature of life, adaptation, and evolution. Yet there's really nothing radical about the foundation of the extended organism idea. It's based primarily on simple principles of physiology, thermodynamics, and conservation of mass. So, how do we get to those radical implications? I want to begin by asking you to go outside to some natural place, wherever you are. I happen to be in my back garden in upstate New York. Take a look around. You're likely to see a scene that's abundant with life wherever you are, even in the harshest desert. Now, ask yourself, how do you make sense of what you're seeing? Like most people, you're probably inclined to see an environment populated by organisms, tangible things that inhabit a space. Plants are rooted in soil, leaves flutter at the ends of branches, birds fly through the air, mice and squirrels burrow through the ground and dig shelters in trees. You may even be inclined to classify all these living things into different species: maple trees, sumac trees, grass, house sparrows, field mice, those sorts of things. Is that the right way? The only way to think about what we're seeing? When we view a natural scene such as this, we are creating a representation of reality. We see a leaf, and we represent the leaf in our minds as a mental construct of the leaf, a representation of the leaf. How we explain things to ourselves depends upon these representations. There's nothing unusual about this, it's just what our minds do. Science strives to explain things by moving us away from representations, back to the things themselves, the reality. But there's really no escaping those representations, so we try to shape the representations. When we look around the natural world, we organize the representations by drawing distinctions. If you've studied biology, you've been trained in what distinctions to make. Of organisms distinct from environments. Of individual organisms distinct from other individuals. Of one species distinct from other species. You know, those sorts of distinctions. Organizing the living world in this way is built around hard distinctions between objects. This is what we might call object thinking. The extended organism idea blurs many of these distinctions. It offers an alternative set of representations of reality based no longer on objects, but as processes. We can call this process thinking. We'll be coming back often to the distinction between object thinking and process thinking as we move toward a new understanding of evolution, so keep it in mind. Think about it. The extended organism idea is an example of process thinking. Looked at in these terms, the organism is now no longer an object embedded in a distinct environment. Life is now a conspiracy between organism and environment, a conspiracy of process to sustain a specified and precarious orderliness. Adaptation now becomes a two-way street. Environments adapting to organisms is as important as the other way around. If process thinking dissolves distinctions between organism and environment, we need different representations, different metaphors to think about it. To build that new representation, we're going to use one of Albert Einstein's favorite tricks, what he called thought experiments. His most famous was to imagine what it would be like to ride alongside a photon traveling at the speed of light. Reasoning through that imaginary circumstance helped him think through to his special theory of relativity. We're going to do a little thought experiment of our own. We'll start with this leaf. The leaf is an adaptive boundary that uses energy to forge matter into a specified and unstable orderliness. There's a stream of energy coming in from the sun. The leaf captures that energy to take carbon dioxide and water and fuse them together to form glucose, a carbohydrate. Oxygen is produced as a waste product. The leaf takes the energy in glucose and uses it to do the work that sustains the specified orderliness of the leaf. In the process, oxygen combines with a carbohydrate to form carbon dioxide and water again. The metaphor here is a cycle. This is a common way to represent this process. You see it all the time in textbooks and in the scientific literature. Matter cycles between states of disorder, carbon dioxide and water, and orderliness, glucose and the specified orderliness of the leaf. In this metaphor, the leaf is an object, an engine that's driven by a continuous stream of energy from the sun. Now, the cycle metaphor is very powerful. I use it myself often, as I've just shown, and as you can see throughout this series. But let's build another representation, one that's more in tune with the extended organism idea. Not a cycle, but what is called a standing wave. The standing wave is a familiar concept, even if you may not know it by that name. Here's an interesting example of a standing wave. This is a standing wave of flowing water in a river course in Munich, the Eisbach River. You can find lots of videos about it on YouTube, as I have. As you can see, the standing wave in the Eisbach River is popular among the surfers in landlocked Bavaria. The standing wave arises because of a peculiar topography of the riverbed. When water flows rapidly enough, it produces this standing wave. The wave has a crest and a trough, as do all waves, but the standing wave does not so much exist as an object would exist. Rather, it persists. The standing wave is not a noun, as an object would be. Rather, it's a verb, as a process would be. It's a specified orderliness that is dynamic and inherently unstable. Take the energy away, and the process, the standing wave, no longer persists. Nevertheless, the standing wave appears to have a kind of objective reality, as it does to all these surfers. The surfers can ride along the crest of the wave. It seems fixed in place. Yet the wave and the surfers' positions on it do not exist. They persist. Okay, enough about surfers. Now, let's imagine this leaf not as a cycle, but as a kind of standing wave. The input of energy drives the production of specified orderliness from disorder. The orderliness is not stable and tends always back to disorder. It's an ongoing process that results in the leaf's persistence. The leaf itself rides on the cusp of this standing wave of orderliness. Now for our thought experiment. If we imagine ourselves riding along with a standing wave, we see the persistence of the leaf's specified orderliness through time, similar to how we see one of those surfers on the Eisbach River. There is dynamic action ongoing, but we are riding with those surfers on the cusp of a standing wave. Let's now expand on this metaphor. This individual leaf is one kind of an adaptive interface. It has an extended physiology determined by its shape, its size, how it interacts with wind, and all the other leaves of the tree. Each is riding on its own standing wave of persistent orderliness. It goes farther. There are other species of trees with their own multitudinous leaves with different shapes. All constitute their own types of adaptive interfaces and their own forms of extended physiology. Other types of plants, like grasses, do the same. And the same applies to things that eat the leaves and the things that eat those. It goes on almost infinitely, eventually to encompass a snapshot of all life, encompassing a multitude of standing waves of persistent orderliness. As we stand in that scene, we are riding along on that standing wave, just like those Bavarian surfers. The infinitude and complexity of that standing wave is a staggering thing to contemplate, but we need to make sense of it because that is what life is, a persistent and precarious standing wave of orderliness careening through time. Let's start with the leaves. Each leaf type is a different type of adaptive interface. Each interacts with its environment in different ways. Each adaptive interface, that is to say, each type of leaf, can be expressed as its own standing wave of orderliness. The standing waves will differ among them. Some might have a sharper crest, others might be more spread out, others might be less orderly than another. But all crests are simultaneous in time. Remember, we are talking about a standing wave. Each leaf type persists simultaneously with every other leaf type. This simultaneity can be expressed by this red line, which connects all the crests in time. It is the wave crest of the collective standing wave. This is the alternate vision of the busy lives that surround us and in which we're embedded. Each moment in time is an extensive standing wave. When we ride along with the standing wave, we see that life sits as a kind of frothy wave crest of diverse forms of specified orderliness, driven there by energy streaming in from the sun and all degrading simultaneously to disorder. The standing wave metaphor allows us to explore questions of adaptation, fitness, and evolution in ways that the cycle metaphor does not. The standing wave also allows us to incorporate the extended organism idea into our thinking in ways that the cycle metaphor does not. Let's flip our view up so we can look down on the standing wave from above. Here's the rise, and the crest, and then the fall. Energy and matter are always flowing through the standing wave. At the crest is a zone of high orderliness. Now, it's important to point out that the standing wave would be there whether or not life was present. The sun feeds in an enormous energy stream to the earth. The energy flows through the wave in parallel streamlines, as I've depicted it here. The crest of orderliness emerges as the organized motions of air and water that we call weather. Life rides on this crest as a kind of froth, as I've put it. Let's dissect the froth a bit, focusing on the form of 3 leaves. Each leaf constitutes its own adaptive boundary, which diverts energy and mass flow to create the leaf's specified orderliness. But part of the adaptive boundary is a halo of extended physiology. This restructures the standing wave to divert still more energy and matter into sustaining the leaves' specified orderliness. The leaves are shaping the crest. They are adapting the environment to themselves. This is the thermodynamic context of adaptation in the extended organism, shaping the flows of matter and energy in the persistent, turbulent, frothy standing wave that represents the ongoing phenomenon of life. This is the new metaphor that will help us finally to begin to bridge that gap between physiological adaptation and evolutionary adaptation.